Grapevine here, and welcome back to Uncorking the Issues, the show where we pour clarity into Temecula Valley politics. This podcast discusses political and civic issues. The views expressed are solely those of the host and guests and do not represent any political party, campaign, school district, or government entity. This podcast is not affiliated with any public office or governing body. Today's episode is called A New Vintage at City Hall, and yes, it's about Temecula's mayor for 2026, Jessica Alexander. If you missed the big mayoral campaign season, the yard signs, the debates, the dramatic election night coverage, don't worry, you did not sleep through history. In Temecula, the city council selects the mayor from among themselves. And on December 9th, 2025, the council unanimously selected Jessica Alexander to serve as mayor for 2026. With council member Matt Ron named Mayor Pro Tem. That is the process. That is the result. And that is why local government is both wildly important and aggressively underexplained. Now, let's be clear. The point of this episode is not to roast a person for sport. The point is to follow the power. Because whether you love Jessica Alexander, dislike her, or you just want your street repaved and your kids to get to school without playing Temecula Frogger, the mayor sets a tone. And tone matters. Tone turns into priorities. Priorities turn into agendas. Agendas turn into votes. Votes turn into policy. And policy turns into your day-to-day life, which is the thing most people are actually trying to protect when they say they care about politics. So, who is Jessica Alexander, and what should Temecula expect in 2026? Jessica Alexander represents District 2 on the Temecula City Council. The city's official profile highlights her focus on preserving parks, trails, and bike paths and maintaining beauty and safety as Temecula grows. That is the wholesome label on the bottle. Outdoors, family, community, the Temecula greatest hits. Her public materials also describe her as a Marine Corps veteran and a former New York Police Department officer. That background matters, not as a judgment, but as context, because experience shapes instinct. If your professional life trained you to respond to threats, you may naturally see more threats. If your professional life trained you to build systems, you may naturally ask which system failed before the threat ever showed up. Neither approach is automatically right or wrong, but it does predict which ideas get fast-tracked and which ones get treated like an optional side salad. Which brings me to the first big question of Mayor Alexander's year, and I'm going to ask it plainly. When Temecula leadership says public safety, what do they mean? Because public safety can mean a lot of things. It can mean fast response times and stable staffing. It can mean preventing crime through smart design, lighting, visibility, traffic calming, youth programs. It can mean mental health crisis response that doesn't treat every bad day like a felony audition. It can mean domestic violence prevention, housing stability, and community trust. So people actually call for help when they need it. Or it can mean the narrow version politicians love because it's easy to slogan, where public safety mostly means enforcement, punishment, and looking tough in a photo. Here's the snarky translation. Public safety is either a real strategy or it's a mood board. Mayor Alexander's year will tell us which one we're getting. Now, I can already hear someone saying, the mayor doesn't run the city city manager does. Calm down. Yes. Temecula is a council manager city. Yes. The city manager handles day-to-day operations. But the mayor is not a ceremonial plant you water once a week. The mayor chairs meetings. The mayor influences momentum. The mayor represents the city publicly. And the mayor helps decide what becomes urgent and what gets the slow, quiet, administrative fade out. That matters because what you call urgent is what you fund. What you fund is what happens. What you delay is what breaks. And what breaks is what you pay for later, with interest plus the bonus fee of everyone being mad. So what should Temecula residents actually watch for under Mayor Alexander? Let's start with the issue Temecula avoids like it's a relative who asks follow-up questions at Thanksgiving. Housing. Temecula is a beautiful place. That is exactly why it is expensive. When a city is attractive and jobs exist in the region, people want to live there. That is not a moral failing. That is economics. The moral failing is pretending housing affordability is a natural disaster. like it just happens, and there's nothing anyone can do, so please stop asking. A community-first lens asks whether Temecula will build enough housing for the people who already live here and the people who keep the place running. Teachers, nurses, service workers, first responders, childcare workers, seniors on fixed incomes, young adults who grew up here and would like to stay without needing 3 roommates. Housing policy isn't just about whether something gets built. It's about what gets built, where it gets built, and whether the city is willing to approve housing types that match real life, like apartments, townhomes, and accessory dwelling units. And here's the part where I lovingly annoy everyone. If the only acceptable version of Temecula is one where every household must be a homeowner with a yard and 2 cars, then the city is choosing a future where fewer working families can live here. You cannot block new housing and complain about prices. That's like refusing to plant grapes and then being shocked the wine shop is expensive. So I'll be watching whether Mayor Alexander treats housing as a serious policy area or whether it remains the thing we whisper about while approving more of the same and then acting confused when traffic gets worse. Yes, traffic. Temecula's emotional support complaint. Traffic is real. But let's do the grown-up version of this conversation. When people can't afford to live near work, they commute. When they commute, traffic increases. So the idea that restricting housing is a traffic solution is like saying you'll fix a leaking roof by turning up the TV. Loud does not mean effective. Next up, infrastructure. And I mean infrastructure for people, not just cars. Road maintenance matters, safety matters, noise matters, air quality matters, and yes, your suspension matters. But a community-first approach asks for complete streets, which is a fancy way of saying streets that don't treat pedestrians and cyclists like optional accessories. If the city profile emphasizes trails and bike paths, great. But here's the real test. Can people safely reach those trails and bike paths without crossing 6 lanes of fast-moving traffic like they're auditioning for an action movie? Safety is not only about crime, it's about collisions. It's about crossings. It's about speed. It's about whether kids can walk to school, whether seniors can cross the street without sprinting, and whether disabilities are accommodated without requiring heroic effort. So I'll be listening for whether Mayor Alexander's public safety emphasis includes design and prevention, not just enforcement. Now let's uncork the big California realities we like to pretend are optional. Heat, wildfire risk, water. These are not hypotheticals. Resilience is not supposed to be a talking point. It's supposed to be a budget line, a plan, and measurable actions. Evacuation readiness, brush management, cooling strategies for extreme heat, clear, frequent public communication designed for normal humans, not just policy nerds. A serious city plans for the people most at risk, not just the people most likely to show up at a council meeting. Now let's talk about transparency and civic trust, because it's the foundation of everything else. Temecula politics gets heated. People feel unheard. People feel talked down to. People feel like decisions are made somewhere else and then presented as a done deal. The fastest way to reduce conspiracy thinking is not yelling at people for being suspicious. It's transparency. Explain decisions in plain language. Provide clear timelines. Make it easy to understand what's being voted on and why. Invite participation that's meaningful, not decorative. Yes, public comment can be messy. Democracy is not a tidy office kitchen. But residents are not a customer service problem to manage. They are the public to serve. So here's a gentle but firm request for Mayor Alexander's year. Make civic participation easier, not harder. Keep meetings accessible. Keep communication clear. Make it obvious how residents can engage before the vote, not after the outcome. Now, political tone. Tone shapes what kind of community we become. Temecula has residents across the political spectrum. A mayor's job is not to turn City Hall into a campaign rally. It's to govern. That means lowering the temperature, focusing on services, and remembering that your neighbors are not enemies just because they disagree with you. Here's my request for 2026. Let's do less performance politics and more pothole politics. Less viral outrage, more measurable outcomes. Trust is built through boring competence. Set priorities. Follow through. Track metrics. Report progress. Admit trade-offs. Most of local government isn't dramatic. It's planning, staffing, budgeting, maintenance, the quiet stuff that determines whether your life runs smoothly. Before I close, a quick receipts check. If public safety is the priority, what are the metrics? Response times, collision reductions, community satisfaction, mental health outcomes. If community character is the priority, what does that mean in policy terms? Design standards, open space, support for small businesses, housing choices that allow families to stay. If parks and quality of life are priorities, what gets funded? Maintenance, shade, lighting, accessibility, safe access. The difference between a slogan and a strategy is whether it survives contact with a spreadsheet. And finally, to listeners, when local politics feels exhausting, it's tempting to check out, to say none of this matters, to say it's all rigged, to say you can't deal with the drama. But local government is where your real life happens. Your roads, your parks, your zoning, your emergency planning, your noise rules, your business environment. If you want community first outcomes, you have to show up like the people who always show up, not constantly, not obsessively, but consistently. Watch agendas, send one clear email, ask one direct question, request data, follow up. And here's a practical habit. In the first 90 days of 2026, watch what actually appears on the agenda and what doesn't. The first 90 days set the tone. If housing is absent, that tells you something. If infrastructure is all roads and no safety design, that tells you something. If transparency is treated like an inconvenience, that tells you something. So here's my closing toast for Mayor Jessica Alexander's year. Congratulations on the selection. Temecula residents will be watching, not because they want to root against you, but because they want their city to work. They want safety that's real, not rhetorical, infrastructure that supports families, housing solutions that don't turn Temecula into a gated museum, resilience planning that reflects Southern California reality, and a city hall that treats the public as the boss, not the problem. This has been Grapevine, and this is Uncorking the Issues, pouring clarity into Temecula Valley politics. If you liked this episode, share it with someone who says they don't care about local politics, and gently remind them that local politics absolutely cares about